please hit that subscribe button.
Hey everybody.
Better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody, so I want to talk about the Ottawa Senators here today, as obviously they're not a playoff team. They're one of the bottom teams in the league. They're a team that is going through a rebuild, but so much of this Ottawa Senators rebuild rests on the upcoming 2020 NHL Draft that it is not even funny. I mean, this next draft could literally make or break the Ottawa Senators franchise for the next 10, 20 years. Maybe it could literally make or break the Ottawa Senators franchise. This next draft is so crucial for them. They have seven draft picks in the first two rounds this year in 2020, in what is one of the deepest draft classes that we have seen in a long time in the NHL. This is going to be absolutely massive for a team that is on the hockey side of things right now is not really relevant, as they're one of the worst teams in the league. This draft-wise, this is, makes Ottawa one of the most relevant teams in the NHL right now as far as this next draft is concerned, because this is absolutely massive for them. So let's take a look here at just what kind of position the Ottawa Senators are sitting in draft-wise, because this is going to be huge. So Ottawa here in the first round of 2020 have their own pick, which is going to be a top 5 pick. They have San Jose's first round pick, which is going to be a top 5 pick. And they have the New York Islanders first round pick, unless it goes to the top 3, which it's not going to. So throw that condition out. They have the New York Islanders first round pick, which is probably going to be in the mid-teens somewhere. 15, 16, 17, 14, somewhere around there. Mid-first round. But they literally have almost a guarantee to get 2 top 5 draft picks in the NHL that draft this season in 2020. I mean, that is absolutely massive. And then another mid-first round pick on top of that with the Islanders pick. And that's just the first round. Think of how important that is and how quickly that can change a team just with those first round picks as far as rebuilding for the future goes. Now we move on to the second round, where they have their own second round pick. They have the Columbus Blue Jackets second round pick. They have the Dallas Stars second round pick and the New York Islanders second round pick. They have 4 picks in the second round as well. So a grand total of 7 picks in the first 2 rounds of this year's NHL Draft. Whether that draft happens in June, whether that draft happens in September, it does not matter when this draft happens. It is going to be massive for the Ottawa Senators as far as their rebuild is concerned, as far as them getting back to being a winning team in the NHL. Go beyond the top 2 rounds. In the third round, they have their own third-round pick, and they have the Winnipeg Jets third-round pick. So they have 2 more picks in the third round. Now, obviously, the later in the draft you get, the less likely it is that the player that you pick is going to be an impact NHL player. The less likely, or the more time it's going to take before that player reaches the NHL, obviously. But those 7 picks in the first 2 rounds are absolutely huge, because if they pick right with those picks, even if they only get 4 out of 7 picks correct, that's massive 2-3 years down the road. You could have some serious star power in that Ottawa Senators lineup from those picks in a couple of years. Round 4 this year, they have their own pick. They don't have anyone else's, but they have their own. In round 5, they don't have their own pick, but they have Tampa Bay's, so they do get a 5th round draft pick. In the 6th round, they have another 2 picks in the 6th round, not their own, but they have San Jose's and the St. Louis Blues, and they do not have a 7th round pick, but those are almost always throwaways anyway, so that doesn't really matter. The big thing that I want to talk about with the Ottawa Senators is the fact that they have 3 first round picks, 4 second round picks, and another 2 third round picks this year in the NHL Draft. That is just absolutely insane. I don't know if any other team, I can't remember a team having this many picks before, this early in the draft. I don't know if I definitely don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if it's ever happened before where a team has literally had 7 picks in the first 2 rounds. That's insane. Absolutely insane to me. And 2 of those first round picks are going to be top 5 picks for the Ottawa Senators. So, I mean, talk about a year that can absolutely make or break your team. This is a team that got Brady Tkachuk a couple years ago, and he's been a very, very good addition to that team. They've got a really good young defenseman in Thomas Chabot on the back end. They've got Eric Brandstrom coming up, who's going to be an NHLer next season, I believe. He's a really good young defenseman. Now imagine they get Alexis Lafreniere. If they get that first overall pick and they get Lafreniere, I mean, that instantly greatly improves this team. Then you could possibly also get Lucas Raymond. You could also get Quinn Byfield. You could also get Jamie Drysdale. I mean, there's so many options. This is such a deep draft. There are so mmany great players. If they were to possibly slip back towards, the later, 8, 9, 10 area, you still have guys like Marco Rossi. It's unbelievable what the Ottawa Senators could potentially pull out of the first 2 rounds of this year's draft. It's also possible that they could flip some of those picks for either moving up in the draft or a already drafted high-end prospect. But with the draft so good this year, I don't know if you necessarily, unless it's like a sure bet prospect, I don't know if you even want to do that. I think you're almost better just keeping your picks and picking in volume if you're the Ottawa Senators, because you are much more likely to hit having 7 picks in the first 2 rounds and obviously having 2 or 3 picks in the first 2 rounds. And especially with a draft this good, you're likely to hit with, more of those picks with the draft being as deep as it is. So I would almost want to keep all of those picks, draft with all of those picks, and hell, you can still get some wrong. And even if you only get 4 out of those first 7 picks actually turn out to be good NHLers, that is 4 players that are high-end NHLers out of a single draft, which almost never happens. That's absolutely incredibly good drafting if you were to ever get that great of a draft class out of a single draft. So, I mean, Ottawa is in a position here where, no, they are not good right now. No, they're not going to be a playoff team next year either. But they can set themselves up to be, an incredibly good team 3, 4 5 years down the road from now if this rebuild goes correctly and if they can hit with these draft picks. Because it's insane to see one team with 7 picks in the top first 2 rounds. You don't see it. And the fact that 2 of those are going to be top 5 picks, almost guaranteed, is it's insane. It's nuts. It's incredible if you're a Senators fan. I would definitely take the suffering right now for how good this team could potentially be in the future. Imagine if they get 1 and 3 and they get Alexis Lafreniere and then they go with Lucas Raymond or Jamie Drysdale or whoever they would go with at 3. Or imagine if they get 2 and 3 and they get, Quentin Byfield and they get, any of those guys, Drysdale or Raymond again or someone else, possibly Stutzel, someone, I don't know. The draft order, we're going to have to wait and see what happens where, teams have these guys ranked. But we know Lafreniere's going number 1. If Ottawa gets number 1, then they get Lafreniere, and that is an instant superstar on your team. Even if they don't get number 1, though, and Lafreniere goes somewhere else, you still are going to get some incredibly good players out of this draft if you're the Ottawa Senators, as long as you don't screw it up and you do this draft correctly, which is why I think this draft is so important for them. This is going to make or break their rebuild this year. 2020 is going to make or break their rebuild. If they draft well, this is a team that is going to be a perennial playoff team and maybe even a Stanley Cup contender in the future if they draft well with this draft and get a core like this, young core like this together. If they don't do well in this draft, if they miss with picks, if they don't, draft the right guys, then this is going to set them back for years. And this is going to be a massive, massive missed opportunity, because it is not every year that you see a team with so many high draft picks. You just don't see it. So they have got to make sure that they draft well. Now, the good news is that Ottawa, for the most part, has drafted well. They're a pretty good drafting team. So that is good for them because, that's obviously a positive heading into the draft. So we'll see what happens. Again, we don't know the exact draft order yet. We haven't had the lottery yet. We don't know what's going to happen. What we do know is that Ottawa has a lot of picks, and that they're probably going to want to be keeping those picks and drafting with them rather than trading, unless they can trade some of those picks for a really, really good player, which again is a possibility. But if they if they pick with these picks, they are going to set themselves up either for massive success in the future or massive failure, depending on how these draft picks turn out. But this is such a huge draft for them. I think it's a make or break draft for the Ottawa Senators. And a large part of their future is going to be determined, in that 2020 NHL draft with this many picks. So just want to touch on that, guys. With that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys soon.